everybody, what is going on? I am Maximus Rex, and this is Big Baby Reviews. Today is Rob Liefeld Day, so we're looking at the next issue of his Youngblood run from the early 90s, the first kind of mini-series, which went on to become an ongoing series. I think that's how that went in the numbering. Not 100% sure, but we'll see as we move along. I'll correct that if I have to as I review Rob Liefeld Youngblood books. But this is Youngblood number 3. Cover dated October 1992, and Disha says August 1992, so I'm not quite sure. Maybe it was intended to come out in August, and it actually came out in October, knowing Image Comics, them always originally being late, most of the guys, at least at first. That wouldn't surprise me, I'm not quite sure, but it doesn't matter at this point. Again, maybe not the quite so well-known cover of Youngblood number 3, because this is the flip book. I don't remember how long Youngblood was a flip book, but anyways, we're still in that era. And this is Rob Liefeld kind of branching out, introducing new characters in his main book to then spin them off into separate series by a different creative team. Other than him, right? So I think by this point, maybe Brigade has come out, and that's by, I think Rob Liefeld's plotting or something, but he's not drawing. Murat Michaels is drawing that one, right? And Supreme might be that second kind of series that's kind of like that, where it's Brian Murray. So we've got this depiction of Supreme by Rob Liefeld, and that's pretty much all we're going to get on this cover. You've got, the very surprised faces of the Youngblood characters that we know from the last 2 issues, at least for a little bit. Actually, last issue mostly focused on the away team, so really we only met these guys at this point in issue 1, I think. And they're all kind of standing in awe at Supreme, because Supreme is supposed to be like basically the Image Universe's Superman, but he's like old and a badass and takes no shit, and went away into space for years and years, 50 odd years or something, and now he's come back. I think it was something like that, right? After World War II or something, he kind of left the planet. Anyways, that's kind of what I remember. I think that's right. And that's the cover, so we'll move on, have a look inside real quick at this introduction to Supreme. First, though, I do want to mention the Youngblood cards are there again. Last issue, where they were in the middle of the staple, where the staple is, the middle, the literal middle of the comic, and that seemed to work fairly well. And now we're back to how it was in issue 1, which is odd because, again, with the flip book concept, the cards are not printed, flipped. So you get an upside down card, which is a little bit odd. And again, because that was in issue 1, they corrected it in issue 2. I don't know why we're back to it here, but hey, stuff like that happens. Not that it's the end of the world, but little production things that, you would want to avoid, I guess, if you're producing this comic. So Supreme, Extra Image presents Supreme, enter Heavy Metal. Heavy Metal was kind of like the team that this corporation wanted Supreme to lead, right? And to kind of be like a corporate superhero team. That was basically the concept. When he came back to Earth, they offered him that job, right? So we're going to be introduced to those guys and to this idea of Supreme coming back to Earth. So the artist is Brian Murray, right? I don't know if there are credits anywhere within the story, so I'll just mention it now. He may be doing the colors here as well. That would seem likely with the color palette that I'm seeing. And I've talked about Brian Murray before. He colored that funky X-Force number 4 issue with the kind of crazy colors, where it was kind of a mistake, and that's why the colors were so crazy, but I like the issue, and it really stands out and looks cool and kind of psychedelic to me. I really like it. So there's a bit of that in his coloring here. And he worked, I remember, I did collect Supreme at least for the first few issues, and I remember thinking, okay, his style is maybe a little bit more traditional, not quite as flashy as the other Image guys. And then, having found out a few years ago, really, that he originally worked for Continuity Studios. That's why there were mistakes in the X-Force issue and the coloring, because the color guides were different from Continuity to Marvel. So there were some choices that he made. He was expecting one thing and got something different, because they weren't using the same codes and stuff. He brings that style here, I think, that continuity style, and it makes sense now. There's like that, not so obvious, but there's a Neil Adams kind of vibe to it, to some of the rendering, the hatching and stuff. It has a Continuity Comics kind of look once right? But again, at this point, using at least some digital coloring, which maybe makes it a little more attractive than what Continuity was offering at that time color-wise. And I mean, I do feel like Brian Murray is probably, upping the ante in his art and trying to go, extreme studio style and pushing it and going the Image way, or however you want to describe that, right? Like kind of as an artist, you can adapt your style most times. If someone wants something a little bit more specific, like this story is really dark, you can kind of darken it up and do more silhouette and, make things creepier or whatever. And, oh, this story is kind of fun and bubbly. So you make it rounder in the art and maybe leave it more open with not so much hatching and stuff, and leave it to the color to be colorful. Like there's all these options, right? When you're an artist. And that, it's the ability to adapt your style to that stuff. It's not about changing your style, right? At least I don't think so. And then we get the full-on shot of Supreme here. So not much to say really about this preview, right? It's just real quick introducing the corporate guys and the superheroes they have under their wings, I guess, or that they've created. And this is just, telling us that Supreme is coming back to Earth. And then continues from there in Supreme #1, right? Written and illustrated by Brian Murray. So that is the short story. I'm going to flip this around now to the main story. Hopefully that didn't do anything to the focus. Sometimes we lose it. I just want to make sure I've noticed that. Looks good. So again, this is maybe what we recognize much more as the cover to Youngblood #3. And again, it's just a Liefeld classic of the characters kind of stand there looking mean and evil, even though they're good guys. I've never seen a more like psychotic looking Shaft than on this cover, right, with the shadows around the teeth and stuff, and it just looks like he wants to bite your face off and eat it. Roided out, I mean, just roided to the gills, but that would make sense, in the world today where bodybuilders and actors doing Marvel movies and stuff are on the roids. Characters like Youngblood, who are government sponsored superheroes themselves, right? Sorry, not that that's the same as Supreme and Heavy Metal. Those are corporate guys. These are government guys, right? So maybe these guys sit around on their ass more or something and get paid for it. That's a government joke there. Other than that, like not, super memorable, just a classic, typical Liefeld cover shot showing the characters up close and personal and mean. Let's have a look inside. So yeah, the card once again on this side makes sense. As for credits, creator, writer, penciler, Rob Liefeld. Excuse me. So notice how it says penciler, because basically on this issue, he's bringing on an inker. Color design, Brian Murray. Lettering, Kurt Hathaway. Technical assistant, Richard Horry. I still am convinced that that's basically Richard Horry doing the backgrounds, or some of the backgrounds, technological elements and stuff, as you'll see probably in some of this issue. And welcome aboard new inker, Danny Miki. So Danny Miki actually started on this issue in professional comics, right? Liefeld kind of discovered him. You've got a signature here, so he inked this. I feel like Miki is like really, 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 really close in what, he's pulling out of Liefeld's pencils. Like I could have sworn Liefeld inked this himself. So Miki's pretty adept at, I would say, mimicking Rob Liefeld's inking style. And you'll see that throughout this issue. Even for me, it's hard sometimes. I'm sure there's still instances in this issue where Liefeld probably inked himself, right? He's always talked about how he always inks the faces. And that's debatable because I think he always inks most faces, but sometimes are done by other artists, and they tend to shift a little bit and be a little bit different than Liefeld faces. But, if I were to look at this without any signature, I would assume Liefeld had inked himself, right? But over time, Miki's going to kind of, sneak in a bit more maybe of his style, and it's going to clean up a little bit of the grit that Liefeld has and really make it sleeker, almost like if he becomes, Scott Williams is with Jim Lee while you've got Miki doing Liefeld, right? And he just kind of makes it even slicker, for mass production, just like Scott Williams does for Jim Lee's art style, right? Jim Lee, when he inks himself, it's a little bit grittier, it's a little bit dirtier. Rob Liefeld as well. These guys clean him up a little bit over time anyways, at least with Miki. And that's what we'll probably see over the next few issues. I do remember as a kid, and let's see if we can pay attention to this, kind of a marked difference between issue 3 and 4 in as far as the look of the art. And back then maybe I wasn't so conscious of it, but I feel like it was the inking. So when I review Youngblood #4 next week, I'll try to remember that and make a point of that and compare with this issue, which is, again, Miki inking. I do think Liefeld's doing a bit of his own inking still here and there, but Miki is really just trying to I guess, keep the job and do a good job and ink as close to what Rob Liefeld would have inked on himself. So again, this kind of shot of Riptide here, I think, is a good example there of, you know, him keeping all the Liefeld hatching, the wide hatching, and these, you know, little Liefeld ticks. Maybe some of this stuff is a little bit more Jim Lee, but overall, you know, he even kept the hatching on the mountain here. I'm going to assume that's a mountain in the background. I don't know for sure. And yeah, so enough time spent on that. Let's look at the actual issue. So as you can tell, still a very kind of gritty style of inking on this. You know, if you had told me Rob Liefeld didn't ink this, I would definitely believe you. So a cool shot of Prophet. So a little disappointing on the story angle. I think I mentioned it last episode with last issue. The fact that, you know, we've got Prophet lined up, the Youngblood away team is what the focus of issue 2 was on, right? And Prophet and his whole story. And they had a little bit of a scuffle, and then the Berserkers show up, and then, you know, these bad guys show up, and basically the cliffhanger of last issue is a promise of a huge battle moving into here. And when we get, you know, to the huge battle, what's basically there is we've missed, you know, 90% of it, and all that's left is Prophet, right? All kind of beat up and looking cool here and very 90s and extreme. I've said before how I find, you know, out of all of Liefeld's costumes, for me, Prophet's is one of the most iconic, because, you know, as much as he deals mostly with asymmetry with a lot of his costume designs, with Prophet, it's very, very symmetrical. And it just, you know, most superhero costumes tend to be symmetrical because it's just easier kind of to remember, I guess, and just easier to codify visually, right? Easier to see as an icon, right? So yeah, all you've got left basically is John Prophet fighting the Disciples here. And the Disciples' design last issue was a lot more detailed than in this one here. So what Liefeld's kind of chosen to do with the background elements of the Disciples is just make them very kind of murky and hatched and shaded and silhouetted and stuff, which is kind of cool. It kind of works, gives it a mood, right? And it's got still got that weird, I was pretty sure Brian Murray's color in this, right? Yeah, so he's still got that weird kind of Brian Murray color choices that I like, right? I say weird, just non-conventional, I guess, as to what superhero comics were doing at that time. Great sequence, though. I think Rob Liefeld still, you know, at this point in his career, drawing characters from lots of different interesting angles, you know, a lot of variety, which I feel kind of starts to wane during his career later on. Not that he's drawing badly, but he recycles poses a lot, and it's like, you know, this is a very cool, inventive pose for me, whether you like Rob Liefeld art or not. There's just something about this here and these mound of disciples and stuff. It's pretty cool. Maybe it harkens back to like almost like a Conan kind of image there, right? Barbarian kind of thing. But yeah, the disciples, just the level of drawing on them is diminishing. But there's still something I find interesting in his treatment of the reflective light and stuff. And it's just, yeah, only Liefeld could kind of pull it off with all these hatching lines and stuff. And just a few panels to point out that, you know, like I said, those characters that I expected to be in the Great Battle kind of promised last issue are just already, you know, all of that happened off camera, and they're, you know, either really beat up or dead, right? But like I would say as a kid, I think we find out, spoilers, I'm pretty sure we find out next issue, none of these characters are dead at all. As a kid, I pretty much assumed that they were, at least at this point when I was reading this issue. Yeah, so quite a cliffhanger for the away team. As boom, we move into the home team, and most of this issue is going to focus on that. So it's kind of nice now where, you know, I appreciate that storytelling wise, he's included a little bit of what's happened, even though we didn't get the great battle, a little bit of what's happened with the away team, you know, just a few pages there to kind of clue us in and keep us abreast of what's happened there. And then we move on to the home team. So got a shot here of basically Shaft being told what's on the schedule, I think, for the day. A little bit of an art snafu here where the panel line wasn't whited out in the art. Cool shot of Bedrock, still his name at this point. Cool Rob Liefeld art. Here we get some interesting kind of, it's not the open mouth profile, right? Which I've pointed out in past issues and X-Force and stuff. He doesn't quite do it a lot or as much in these Youngblood issues, at least these early ones, I think. So his profile here is pretty good when he's closed mouth, but his open mouth profiles always look kind of odd, right? You can look some of my old New Mutants reviews and I'll mention that. So just not a lot of background in this whole sequence. And when I say not a lot, I mean, is there any? So let's just talk about that by going back a page real quick. So, okay, establishing here that we are where, I don't know. He inked a little bit of some hatching on the wall behind him, I guess. And this is Brian Murray's doing here, actually, you know, creating a floor. I guess that's what's happening there. So I guess we could say there's a floor and a wall, and they are somewhere. No idea. Just a blue background. Computer colored shadow here. Feel like this line should not be there. Just take that out. At the top here for the word balloon, there's a lot of, there's some production snafus in this issue. Not a huge issue either. But, and I gotta say, there's a lot of dialogue on this page. Not a fun page that I'd want to read. I mean, I'm sure I read it as a kid, but yeah, even this profile here, there's like a slight manga feel that I kind of like here. And this is funny too, because as they walk out, so now we kind of figure out they're in some sort of building and they're walking out. The guard is there, and Bedrock says, "Have a good day, buddy. If the guy in cell block H gives you any problems, give us a call." Thank you. I'll make sure I do that. Definitely. So no one notices out of these, you know, Youngblood dudes. Well, there's two of them. This guy's wearing some kind of funky mask and a purple outfit. It's kind of odd. I think something like this art-wise, I remember as a kid just, you know, thinking there's potential with these kind of characters, and I don't know if it was ever really resolved in the Youngblood miniseries. I guess as we move on, we'll see if it was or not. But it's like, you know, Liefeld has had this kind of mythology of these cat people combating them. I forget if they're the Catellans, and like I knew the lore back then, right? Even though it was very thin, I could remember all the details and stuff. It's not quite as obvious to me now, and I'm not going to be reading these issues through and through to find out. But it promised something that, you know, this maybe was a more interesting aspect. It's almost like he's bringing in some of the Shi'ar and that kind of stuff from the X-Men comics into Youngblood. And that was the idea here. Some Star Trek, right? These ships kind of look Star Trek inspired. You know, I've talked about Rob Liefeld often, what he's inspired by and he's into works its way into his comics somehow, which is cool. I mean, a lot of artists do that, right? Sometimes it's more obvious with some artists, and Rob Liefeld, maybe that's the case. This shot of Shaft is interesting, where I'm like, it's not horrible. There's a lot of that weird Liefeld hatching and stuff, but there's something maybe off model, the hair, like there's something about it. Maybe it's, again, the Miki inking at this point. Maybe that changes the art a bit more here, but again, as Liefeld has stated, he more than likely at least inked the face here. Yeah, I don't know. It's something almost more as if it's a portrait. Like I've seen Rob Liefeld can draw, you know, reality. I've seen portraits he's done, this old drawing E.T. he did, and obviously reality. E.T. is not reality, but I mean, he drew the puppet kind of thing, you know, that was actually a real thing back then in movies. And he can do that realistic style. If you look up some of his art, you'll see that photorealistic, you know, like penciled values and stuff. He can do all that, right? So this is stylistic choices that he's making. And I feel like in this one here, even though we still got the Rob Liefeld kind of staples and the small teeth and the Liefeld nose, we're getting just a little bit more realism in it. I don't know. There's something about that one there. Yeah, these open-mouthed characters that he draws constantly. I'm going to assume this is Lois Lane and Superman, or Clark Kent, right? How many cameos have those two done in like other, you know, out of DC comics, in Marvel comics and Image? So many. Something weirdly Jim Lee-ish about the face here on Shaft. And again, where are they? So they're on some sort of podium with a crowd. Okay, journalists, but like such minimal information for backgrounds. I guess this is really the point in this issue I've really noticed, where Liefeld really starts, you know, slacking on those backgrounds. And boom, all of a sudden we've got, I guess the security guard here has actually made her move. Because as much as we thought it was a guy before, maybe, clearly this character has breasts, so must be a woman. I would hope so. Maybe it's a red herring. It's a man who wears, you know, prosthetic boobs under the costume so people will think he's a woman. Maybe. So I think here we can maybe say we start to see a little bit of the Liefeld stylistic ticks changing, in the sense that the inking is changing it, right? We're getting a bit more maybe of the Miki near the end of this issue. Maybe his deadlines are coming to a head and crunch time, you know? This is the kind of thing Richard Horry in this case I think drew. This motorcycle here, for example, is probably maybe inked by Miki, but drawn by Richard Horry. That's where he's the technical assistant. Pretty good glass breaking. There are no pieces, or very few pieces, overlapping the characters. More of that would have helped create even more of a sense of dimension. Obviously, Bedrock's pretty big, so he's got a bit more, but I think more of that would have heightened the sense of depth even more. What's the sound effect here? Okay, crash. I thought it was a T somehow. Okay, kind of hard to read. Oh, blob of ink here on my issue of Youngblood. This is a pretty cool kind of sequence. Don't know if I'd dedicate, you know, more than half of a double page spread to it, but Rob Liefeld did. And yeah, so as far as the backgrounds go, we're just going full on 90s. Brick wall, nothing. Just a color gradient here. A rainbow. They're fighting on the Rainbow Bridge. Or maybe in the gay village. I don't know. Huh? Ninjas? That's funny, because that's kind of what we all say when we get to this sequence here. Ninjas in Youngblood. So Rob Liefeld felt like drawing ninjas, so that's who the, you know, nameless, faceless villains became. He's always got that just like the old cartoons, right? The similarly costumed gang of thugs. It's like a Power Rangers trope. It's a trope of a lot of kind of, I guess, young boys entertainment. Got Bedrock here. Is this where he says Yabba Dabba Doom? Did I miss that? And he makes a Ninja Turtle joke too. What clan are you guys from anyway? The Bad Breath clan? And I thought the Turtles had it bad. Yeah, here it is. I knew it was in here. Yabba Dabba Doom. Because his name was Bedrock, right? Flintstones. Exactly. I always kind of, you know, one of the rare instances where I liked a bit of dialogue. And is Rob Liefeld, once again, he's credited as the writer here. Yeah, so there's, you know, never, ever gonna state that Rob Liefeld is like an amazing, great writer. But there are little moments that I do enjoy every once in a while, right? And he says here, could I get sued for that? I wonder. And that actually happened. So that's kind of funny. Maybe he shouldn't have thrown that in there. I don't know. He got sued by the company that makes the Flintstones because they didn't want to be associated to a comic that's a little violent compared to, you know, and I'm assuming they found out and someone probably pointed out this exact kind of comic and scene. So yeah, it wasn't working in Rob's favor, and that's why Bedrock eventually became Badrock. Going back to the little moment that Rob Liefeld wrote here that I think is interesting and funny. You know, the ninjas throw thwip, some arrows at Bedrock, and he says, arrows? You're kidding me. They'll break. Told you. And, you know, I'm not saying that's genius writing or comedy or anything, but, you know, I remember thinking just that little sequence is actually kind of funny. Let's not forget that Bedrock is a teenager, right, basically, so. Nice up close punch to the face here, and the ninjas are done. Chapel's just shooting him, right? He's basically kind of like the Punisher, right? Like blowing out their innards and stuff. I mean, that was pretty rough back in the day. As a kid, I was like, whoa, not used to seeing that in Marvel Comics. You know, government-sponsored superheroes just blasting people away like that. It's a pretty interesting concept, I guess. But, you know, later on we'll learn more about Chapel's shady past and his connection to Spawn, right? So boom, for no reason at all the other prisoners have also escaped here. I'm sorry, not for no reason at all, but while they were fighting all these ninjas, she was able to get them all out. That's, you know, like, no one in Youngblood was like, okay, we'll take care of the ninjas, and one of us follow that, you know, purple girl who's going to release everyone from prison. But yeah, no one did that. And concepts that he, you know, he calls it a body slide here. 10 seconds till body slide, which is something the Mutant Liberation Front had in X-Force, right? They would just kind of teleport out. So it's funny how like they could just travel through teleportation and boom tubes similar to the New Gods, and there's a lot of what do they call it? Deus Ex Machina in Rob Liefeld stories, right? A portal that just dang you, you know, till next time, and then they teleport off. So these guys are called the Four, and now there's 5 of them with this lady here. So I guess you'd have to call them the 5. This was it Deadlock? Is that his name? Dreadlock. It's got to be Deadlock. He's kind of like Rob Liefeld's Wolverine, who appeared in issue 1, right? So these are all the guys who were jailed in issue 1. He ends up graduating or moving on to another of Liefeld's teams. Why is their name escaping me right now? There was Brigade, and there was the other one with Cabot, and the Bloodstrike. There you go. Yeah, so he was a member of Bloodstrike a little bit later on after this. And so they actually get either an arrow. Oh no, he's telling Chapel to shoot. So Chapel actually shoots this guy here, but he's not like mortally wounded or dead. I mean, where did he shoot him? The blood's coming out of his mouth, so just an odd choice. This shot, though, I do think is cool with the blood coming out there. I think that's the motion and the way he twisted the body there is actually pretty cool. And whatever color treatment was done to these guys, you know, did Liefeld actually draw that kind of more open line style with no hatching? That's interesting too. You know, even though the contour line's been changed to a color, kind of like it. And the issue ends off with picking all that up there almost, I guess, right? Die Hard. We've received an emergency distress signal from Berlin. There's been an accident involving the away team. We've got to move fast and pray to God we're not late. So now that all the other characters, the Youngblood away team, the Berserkers, and now maybe even Prophet have fallen to the Disciples, it's up to the home team to go save their ass, basically. So they'll be going next issue to meet up, and both kind of away team and home team storylines actually will kind of coalesce into issue 4, which is, you know, thankfully where this is heading. So there's a little more cohesion, and you know, remember we talked about how issue 1 was split into 2, and you know, we weren't really getting enough of either of them. So slowly moving towards a one cohesive storyline with this issue. And that's it for Youngblood number 3. We were talking about them. There you go. Bloodstrike. You know, Deadlock is on the team there in the picture. So I remember being a little bit confused as to what exactly is going on. Like, what's with this guy here? This, you know, copy of Wolverine. Yeah, so we're done. That is my review of Youngblood number 3. If you have any interesting tidbits, let me know in the comments. Questions, concerns, let me know below as well. Thank you that those of you who are subscribed and still following along and checking out my videos. I really do appreciate it. Those of you who are watching and are not subscribed, please do so. It's really easy for you. Just one quick let me try that again. One quick click down below, and it helps our channel grow, helps get us out there to other people who are like-minded, and it'll help us grow my subscription list as well to our next milestone, which will be 500, which hopefully we reach sooner rather than later. So thank you for watching, guys. I really appreciate it. Everyone out there, have an awesome day. King Comics presents Big Baby, Volume 1, Issues 1 to 13, 204 pages of story and art. King Comics also presents Star Crasher one-shot, 32 pages, cosmic sci-fi surrealist adventure. You can find these fine comics at kingcomics.ca, at MaximusRex13 on Instagram, or on Facebook, MaxRex or Big Baby.
Like! Subscribe!